Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. And welcome to this Halloween edition of the show. It is Halloween by the time this episode will come out. Am I recording it on Halloween? No, but you guys don't need to know that, even though I told you. It's just happening. And we got a couple of housewarming things before we jump into our news and our big topic today. I have a new studio. I'm still in the process of setting it up while I'm recording this. And I think it's going to look pretty nice. I hope it turns out as good as it has. I hope it turns out as good as I want it to. But it should be cool. I'm going to do like a whole video talking about the setup. I got a lot of figures up in display. So you guys, I'm going to do a video talking about those. Plus, I got a bunch of new series that I'm going to be working on. A couple of longer scripted format stuff. Even a couple more short stuff like Out of the Bin. I think we're going to be jumping into some new stuff. It's going to be pretty fun for the future of this channel. And of course, we are going to get into the news. But before that, let's just briefly mention our topic today is going to be my pitches, my ideas to reboot the Universal monsters in the vein of The Invisible Man. Now, I loved The Invisible Man, so I thought this topic would be perfect for Halloween, considering it's one of the few movies I saw this year that I actually said, that's good. That's really fun. That's really cool. And before that, we got a couple bit of news because I did my big news video, GeekWave, the other week. There's not as much news, but we got enough to fill out some time. Starting with one I think is very interesting that I had no idea about. I got this information of news from Fat Man Beyond. Mark Bernardin put it in his news, and I was like, I'll talk about that. I think that's kind of cool. Seth Macfarlane, a guy who has been featured heavily on this channel. I've talked about him in a whole GeekWave video, and I've talked about his stuff a lot. He is going to be producing a Smokey and the Bandit series for television. That's awesome, but chalk this up to things I had no idea were coming out. You know, this is such a surprising thing that I didn't know was going to be happening. I really like the idea, too. It sounds like it could be something that works perfectly for the style that Seth has become accustomed to. It's very simplistic, very easy, and I think it could be really cool. I really like the idea of having him work on a property like this because it kind of brings back that classic feel that he's known for. Sadly, Burt Reynolds will not be a part of it. I think he would have been great to see come back in any form of role, but I'm curious to see who they could cast as a lead for that. If they would go a younger route. I know Burt Reynolds wasn't like old when he did Smokey and the Bandit, but like he was still a mature guy. I don't want to see like a Dacker Montgomery or somebody taking on the role of the Bandit. I don't know. That's just me. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it'd be cool. I really like that first movie of Smokey and the Bandit. I think it's really fun, really entertaining. The rest of them, they exist. I don't think I've seen the rest of them. I've seen two for sure. I've seen the first two for sure. I don't know if I've seen the rest, but that's fine. I think this could be really fun. I love Seth MacFarlane. I love Smokey and the Bandit. What a winning combination. I'm actually excited to see what that could be. And our next piece of news here comes to us in the form of our first look at Red Hood. Now, I have said about this show, I don't watch it. Titans does not interest me. I have no opinion on Titans whatsoever. This Red Hood costume, it looks really good, but it also looks like shit all at the same time. You know, I think, now I don't know if I'm going to be right on this, but maybe the Red Hood costume is one of those ones that you can't adapt just because of how dumb it is. Or maybe it's the fact that he's got such a bulky sweater on underneath his jacket that makes it look like shit, but it looks very comic accurate, and that might be to the detriment of the actual thing, just because I don't think it looks that good when you're looking at this. Also, the actor is too young, he's too short, he's too not ready for this, and I don't really want to see what this could be. I don't know. It could maybe we'll see something good. Maybe. Like anything could be good. But this does not look good. I don't like it. So we'll have to wait and see how that comes out. I don't think it's going to be worth it. And here's something I just threw in here just because I wanted to kind of fill out some more space when it comes to the news. And I'm probably going to do a whole video talking about this once we get a confirmation. But Oscar Isaac is kind of in negotiations to portray Moon Knight. Now, I like this idea. If you guys go back to one of my older videos from like 3 years ago, I did a video on who should play Moon Knight, and one of my picks was Oscar Isaac. I think he's a very talented young actor, somebody I really enjoy seeing on screen. He is one of those guys who understands the genre, especially when they give him a chance to be the kind of depressed weirdo he loves to play. If you haven't seen Inside Llewyn Davis, you should watch it. If you haven't seen Life Itself, you should watch it. Maybe Life Itself isn't the best movie, but he does a good job in it. Like, he is a talented actor. He is up there with some of the best, I think, of modern times and of all time. I just really enjoy his work, and I think he could definitely understand the character of Mark Spector to the point where I'd be super on board to see what he does and what he would do with it. I like that idea a lot. I'm very excited to see if this actually happens. I know a lot of people wanted Oliver Jackson Cohen. I was with you. I know a lot of people said Shia LaBeouf, but that's a terrible choice. Oscar Isaac is a really good choice. He's part of the Disney family. He might not love it, but he is part of the Disney family. So that is something I think we can all be happy with, that he's actually done this before. And our next piece of news here comes to us in the form of some Netflix bullshit that's happening. They have bought the rights, I guess. They have purchased the franchise ability that is Assassin's Creed. You know, because The Witcher was so good, they wanted to get more of those classic video games to make it into stuff that's going to be fine. I have a lot of problems with Netflix's motto when it comes to properties and just making stuff. We won't get into it here. That's a video for another time, but I want to be excited for this just because I think Assassin's Creed is such an interesting concept. But the movie sucked. This doesn't like sound interesting anymore. I don't think this concept is going to be really fun or fascinating to see. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe it'll be something good, but I don't really want to see any live action Assassin's Creed stuff. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's going to be cool or interesting. And our last piece of news is this one that I'm like, they finally did it, eh? They can finally say this son of a bitch went into production. Y: The Last Man, a show that's been talked about, I think, for years, has lost so many creatives on board to do it. They've lost so many leads for the project. They can finally say they are starting production. Now, I'm under the impression that I will believe it when I see it. We will have to wait and see if this is actually going to make it to the production line, but about damn time. Like, it seems like it's taken so long for it to get here. That's kind of amazing how long it's taken to get to this one spot for this show. And I kind of like Y: The Last Man. I think it's a fun, interesting book that could definitely work for a television series. FX seems like a good place for it because it could give off those Legion vibes, mixed with some Fargo vibes. I think it could be really fun. You have to have the right cast. You have to write ampersand, you think they'd do a real monkey? I think they do a real monkey. I don't know about you guys, but I could definitely see them doing a real monkey. We'll see. That kid from Dunkirk was in the talking for a long time. Is he still attached? I think he might have dropped out because he got Eternals. I'm not positive, though. But we'll see. We will see. And that's all the news I have. It's kind of a short week, not a lot to talk about, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to jump into my pitches for the Universal Monsters. So I love the Universal Monsters, and I enjoy seeing the various angles that have been taken with each character. At some point, I guarantee you, maybe next Halloween, we'll do a Best Draculas Portrayed on Screen GeekWave. But until then, and we're in this spooky season, we are going to be talking about all the other monsters, and we're going to try to find a way to bring some fresh light into these classic horror icons, in the vein of The Invisible Man, like I said. And because of that, I am not going to pitch my reboot for The Invisible Man, since I think he is my favorite classic character from this assortment, and that new movie perfectly sums up how you could reboot that, making him a creepy stalker. I can't top that. Like, I can't give you a pitch that's better than that for The Invisible Man, so I just said, well, we'll just leave it. I'll give you the rest of them, and by the rest of them, I mean, we'll run down. We got Frankenstein, Dracula, the Bride of Frankenstein, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, the Phantom of the Opera, I think I'm missing one, the Wolfman, and I put the Metaluda Mutant from This Island Earth on here. So it's going to be really fun. We will get into it right now. And I got a couple of just like quirky, stupid titles for a couple of them. Just stuff that I'm like, here's like the working title for the pitch when I wrote it. Starting with the first one being Incel Dr. Frankenstein, also called The Coming of the Bride. So I'm going to read to you guys my little synopsis here for this idea. And please, in the comments, let me know what you guys think of this idea for a reboot of the Dr. Frankenstein character and of the bride. Dr. Victor Frankenstein is a well-mannered man, usually keeping to himself and often striving for as little social interaction as possible. He was once a renowned neurosurgeon, but after a scandal resulting in poor behavior, he was forced to retire and take a job as a leading professor at a university, where he teaches students the study of the brain. He keeps his office hours very quiet, and the students understand to keep their distance, except for one student, a woman in her 30s who is taking the class to learn more about the reason her husband had brain failure. She wants to learn more from Frankenstein, but unknown to her, Victor has secretly been obsessed with her the entire semester, going as far as to monitor her brain patterns in the classroom. One night, Victor confesses his love, and with no reciprocation from the woman, he lashes out in anger and uses experimental tech he's been working on to fry her brain. She dies. Victor takes her corpse and uses his secret equipment to bring her back from the dead, where she is initially submissive but starts to grow weary of her creator. She starts to learn about her old life, and more importantly, about her dead husband. She kills her creator, who is Dr. Victor Frankenstein. She digs out her husband and uses Victor's tech to bring him back. Thus flipping the script on Frankenstein creating Frankenstein's bride, we now have the bride creating Frankenstein's monster. I thought this was a really interesting angle to take for the Dr. Frankenstein character. We live in like that culture of like the simpin' boys and the incel boys where everyone feels entitled and they have these things. And I kind of wanted to play up that angle with Dr. Frankenstein, that he's a very insecure young man who can't really understand how to talk to women. So he literally, once he professes his love, he lashes out to the point where he kills her. I think there's a very scary story in there. It makes the bride more sympathetic, and it also plays up the idea that she wants her husband back. She's loyal to her husband. I think that's a fun angle to play up. Plus, flipping the script, having the bride create the monster, I think is a little more interesting, a little less similar than stuff we've seen before. I think it's pretty cool. I really liked doing that one. It's just a really fun idea to play with. And come on, it's your classic tropes. You're still getting the creation of the corpse. You're still getting the bride freaking out, lashing out at her creator. I think it's pretty fun. So that is my pitch for a Frankenstein's monster / Bride of Frankenstein reboot. Now, with all of these two, I will give you the caveat that maybe you could potentially do sequels. I think a sequel to The Invisible Man would work. I think a sequel to all my pitches could work. The other thing I wanted to do while doing this, only a few of them are villains, and only a few of them are heroes. Like, I think the Bride and Frankenstein are the hero, and in a couple other one of my pitches, maybe there's like one other hero, but the rest of them I straight up wanted to make villains, just because these are monsters. They are creatures of the night. Play that shit up a little bit. So that's what I wanted to do. I think it's pretty cool. And I really did enjoy coming up with some of these. Some of them are shorter than other ones. I put my top 3 at the beginning just because they're like the biggest like stories I had for them. So that was Frankenstein. Let's jump into the one for Dracula. Or as I'm calling it, Jeffrey Epstein Dracula. I wrote that down and I'm instantly like, you got the entire story from that title. I'm not saying Jeffrey Epstein is a vampire in this story. But we'll read it, and you guys can figure out for yourself if you like the idea this went. Mina Harker, a young aspiring journalist, moves to the big city of some random big city. She has a Lois Lane attitude and a need to bring down the 1%. Nina is slowly making a name for herself. One day, the research on a wealthy socialite known for his lavish parties and countless stream of money leads her to a secret support group of women who claim that the socialite, who will name James Vlad, has assaulted them. She meets with these women, each story bleeding into the last, as they bring up some common themes. All of the women were virgins when they met James. They were all drugged after their encounter, and they were always met with James at night. Mina wants to investigate further, but is getting pushback from her editor, who she believes is paid off by James, as the site doesn't slander him in any of their other previous works. She pressures James's assistant, Mr. Renfeld, into setting up an interview for her, under the impression it will lead to a more sexual nature. She is flown to a private island, where she learns that the 1% like to mingle there. She meets with James, and is immediately clued into something being off about him. The cards start to fall as she walks around the island in broad daylight. No one else is there except Renfield. Starts to stalk her, waiting for the moment to lure her into his master's chambers. While walking about, she meets an old man lurking around the island in broad daylight. This man is Van Helsing, who claims that James Vlad and his wealthy friends are vampires, and that James bought his family's company in the 60s, and is still the same man and looks the same age. Come nighttime, it's a Harker and Helsing showdown, as they both fight for their survival, and enough evidence to lock James up for good. Who knows how many vampires are in positions of power? I thought this was such an interesting angle to take with the Dracula character, making him this creepy socialite who is so prominent, such a high-ranking figure in the world, that he has his own island, and it's a sex island, and he lures young virgin women there. I had it where he didn't kill the women, but he just drugs them up, because I wanted it to play up the creepy sexual nature of luring the young women in. I think that's a really interesting angle to play. I love this idea a lot, actually. I think having it be Nina Harker and Van Helsing, two characters who are famously monster hunters, I think that could add another layer to that. It's just something different that we haven't seen from the Dracula character before, making him a full-on sexual predator, a creepy weirdo. There's always hints of sexual nature in the stories of Dracula. It always gets played up. But here I'm like, let's take it a step further. He has an island for the 1%. Some of them might be vampires, and that's why they stay in their positions. And they lure young women in there, or even young men, who knows, it could be either of the two, into this place. And they use them for these things. And Mina Harker being this strong, powerful woman who's like, I'm going to take you down. I thought that was such a cool and interesting angle to take. Something I thoroughly thought could make for a great movie. I don't know. Could I write this script? I might. But it's a good idea. But I also think it's like, do we really want to see this? Because it's kind of depressing. And it's going to make you hate Dracula. Which is what I wanted to do. I want you to have sympathy for the bride. I want you to have sympathy for Frankenstein's a monster. I don't want you to have sympathy for Dracula. I want Dracula to be the one you hate. I hate him. I like Dracula, but hate this guy. Hate him good. And that will lead us into my other big pitch, and that is small town Wolfman versus the big corporation. And here it is. Larry Talbot is a simple man. Coming from a small town, he spends most of his weekends fishing, just taking it easy when he isn't busy being the chief of police. Larry's town isn't accustomed to change, so when the country's largest tech company decides to open its factory doors just outside the town, suddenly his quiet life is not so quiet. People start to move into the town, including the Williams, a newlywed gypsy couple with big ambitions. The husband is the night manager at the factory, while Jenny stays home in domestic bliss. Suddenly, the town starts getting reports about pollution killing the fish in the nearby river. People are getting sick, acting strange. Larry goes to investigate the factory, where he is shocked to discover a series of bizarre deaths occurring around the time the new gypsy manager is working. Larry talks to Jenny to see if anything is off, and the idea of the curse is revealed to Larry. Jenny's husband is cursed, and at night, during a shift, becomes a werewolf and attacks his crew, normally leaving them for dead. The runoff from the river is a mix of blood being spilled from the murders and a chemical used in the tech to stop the units from burning up, resulting in 2 cover-ups within the company. It's Larry against the big business as he tries to fight the werewolf and seek justice on the factory poisoning his town, eventually leading him to getting bit. This was a weird one for me because I was trying to think of how could you play up the Wolfman in a modern setting, because the idea of a werewolf is very like old school. I feel like it's such a classic idea. So if you notice straight away, Larry was my lead character, and he's not the Wolfman. The Wolfman is the gypsy husband, and that's why I had him getting bit at the end, where he could potentially become a werewolf in a sequel. I wanted to have it kind of like the tech factory knows about what the husband the gypsy guy is doing, and they're trying to cover it up too, but because it's polluting the lake and the river, there's a big cover up being in place. But you also tell that the town is kind of against this, and Larry being the chief of police, he's the one who'd have to go investigate this. So I just wanted to kind of play up that angle where it's kind of just like your smaller scale horror, where we're watching a chief of police kind of investigating murders and doing more of the detective style. We also play up this idea of the horror that there's a creature prowling among the night killing people. But you also play up the horror that this big corporation doesn't care if it's like polluting the lakes, which is kind of goes to that 1% thing where they're all kind of assholes. You could even have it, if you wanted to connect these, maybe the owner of this corporation is friends with James Flad. You want to set that up, it could be kind of interesting. I wanted just to have that moment to bring those up. I think Larry, just like the bride, is your sympathetic lead where you're following him like, these people are ruining his town. He is just trying to protect the people of his town and keep them safe. And I think that's something that could be really cool and a really unique experience to see being portrayed in a film like that, because we haven't really seen it before, where you see your small town hero reluctantly trying to save his town from the big corporation while everything's being covered up and thrown away from him. I mean, I guess we have seen it before, but this takes it into a more horrific direction that I think could be a really compelling one. And our next one is called That Thing That James Cameron Does at the Bottom of the Sea, but with the creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, okay, that wasn't a creative title, but you guys get it. You get it. So this one is pretty self-explanatory. Since the creature from the Black Lagoon is close to being a timeless tale, there's not much that you could do to really change it or update it. So I think what you would have to do is like update the ideas of the tech. So it's kind of the same exact plot, the same exact structure of the story, but you just kind of change a couple of things here and there. For example, you don't set it on like a vintage boat, or in the past. You could set it in the modern day. You just add more intensity and fear. You take a crew working on a boat, investigating some uncharted waters, and they use one of those like one-man submarine things that James Cameron uses when he goes below the surface to like do whatever the hell he does down there. And as they explore the murky waters, we see that the creature is stalking them. He's swimming and lurking all about as the crew tries to capture him, but they can't. It adds like a level of fear where we're not going to see the creature as much as we're going to see the Wolfman or Frankenstein's monsters. It's more like we are going to see the idea of the fear being in place. It's like how in Jaws, the fact that you don't see the shark a lot makes it more scary. That's kind of what I want to do with the creature. We're just going to see him in short glimpses and short glances. But when you're in like a one-man submarine, it becomes this like, it becomes more intense because there's nowhere you can go. You can't like run to the other end of the boat. You're literally stationed in this one place. You can't really escape from that feeling. And I wanted to play that up in this movie just because the creature itself, he's not like, you can't like have like a big story with him. I guess you could lead into like the polluting water stuff, but I'm like, let's make him like a creature that's being hunted, and that's how we'll feel sympathy for him. Maybe we won't feel sympathy for him. It depends how you look at it. Is he harming the world by being there, or is he protecting his land? Depends how you want to view that angle. But I was just like, if we take like those one-man submarines, it's close quarters, it's very intense, it's dark, scary, murky waters, you can't really see everything clearly, that adds something else to the level of story. I think it could be really exciting. And I really like the creature, so I didn't have a lot to say about this one. Like I said, it's harder to update the creature without going down like the environmental protection route. And I was like, well, everybody would do that. Like The Shape of Water, that was pretty much it, right? Like that's pretty much how you update the creature. So I thought, let's just bring up that kind of shit. And then we have The Mummy of the Living Dead. Now, The Mummy is the hardest one to reboot since it's been done a lot, and most of them have been pretty good. So my idea for this one is less in depth than some of the others. So here's kind of like the gist of my idea for rebooting The Mummy. We follow the story of an archaeologist who's working with a museum to uncover a recent find buried below a long-lost ruin. They discover the tomb of an ancient pharaoh, whose story is known by the archaeologists. The pharaoh was a man steeped in tradition, who hated the progress his people actively tried to achieve and would have them punished for reaching new strides. Upon his death, a curse was placed upon him to return to the land of the living once humanity progressed to futures unknown, like the one we are currently in. The pharaoh awakens, attacks the crew who found him, though this time around, his powers are more like that of a zombie. His touch causes bodies to decay and become mindless creatures under his control. The pharaoh escapes into the city, and suddenly seeing the future that has been built, drives the mummy to rebuild the world in a way he remembers from yesteryear. Imagine a racist seeing 2020 and being, "You kids today, you ruin everything." That's my pitch for the mummy. An old pharaoh who sees the progress the world has made, sees everything about it. The technology, the inclusion, all this stuff, and is immediately like, nah, fuck this. I do not like this. We got to go back to the past when things were good, homeboy. This is such a stupid idea. I also wanted to play up the idea that maybe you have it like a zombie thing. I think there's some similarities between the mummy idea and the zombie idea. So I wanted to be like, well, this pharaoh, he can kill things by touching it, and then they become these mindless creatures that work for him. I thought that'd be an interesting angle. That's kind of different than what we've seen before. I don't remember what happened in the Tom Cruise mummy. Did we see that in there? Jake Johnson was in it. That's all I remember. But I thought, I like the idea too. It's like, what if like an old man who has never seen progress before saw something happening today and was like, this is fucking awful. This is the future we built. You know, where's the world we had that was like dictatorshipy and like intense and that kind of stuff. I thought that could be a really interesting idea to play for the pharaoh. And even so, if you wanted to change it up a little bit, you could make him a Nazi. Instead of being an ancient pharaoh, it's like a Nazi that's like was cursed, but when they find his like coffin somewhere that's not supposed to be, it awakens him, and suddenly he's like, for the Third Reich, we do this. And that could be a different angle to play too. I wouldn't go that route just because, come on, zombies are overplayed. I mean, zombies and Nazis are overplayed. But I think if you're going to do something different with the mummy, why not go into a route that's a little bit like, progress sucks. I'm going to make the world in the image it's always should have been, which is the pharaoh way and the way of this mummy. So that was like my last big idea for any of these characters. I think out of all my ideas, I like Frankenstein's bride and Dracula the most, just because they're the ones that initially I had in my head when I was coming up with this topic idea. You could do something cool with the creature. I always thought that. You could do something cool with the Wolfman. I think my Wolfman idea is a little different, a little outside there. It could be cool. But I really like Jeffrey Epstein Dracula and Incel Dr. Frankenstein. I think those are really cool ideas. And like I said at the beginning, I was trying to think, how do we reboot the Phantom of the Opera? And the only idea I came up with is he's a retired sitcom star who's pissed off that he's no longer famous. But then that's not called the Phantom of the Opera. And maybe you guess you could have like he joins the opera and he fights the person that rebooted his show. That's all I could come up with. I think that sucks. And I don't like that I came up with it, but that's all I could think of when it came to the Phantom of the Opera. Like, what would you guys really do to reboot the Phantom? I don't know. Like, I was trying to think of some other ideas, but I couldn't really come up with any ideas to reboot the Phantom. So I was like, oh, this is fine. It's pretty timeless, actually, because you can have an opera anytime, really, so there's not much I'd add to it or do differently about it. It is what it is. And then I would say you just literally reboot This Island Earth. Is that a Universal movie? I don't remember. I just remember because I have the Metaluna mutant figure in front of me while I was writing these notes. And I'm like, I love this guy. Let's do this again. That's kind of like a trippy sci-fi brain thing, isn't it? or like it's like a crashed ship. It's pretty timeless. Like you could take that idea and just like run with it in the modern day. I think it'd be pretty cool. So let's do a recap for you before we jump into our recommendations. So we live in a world where we have the Invisible Man who's a stalker and stalking his ex-girlfriend. In that same world, we could have the incel Dr. Frankenstein, who's a disgraced neurosurgeon who builds his monster because he loves her too much. We have a 1% wealthy socialite, Dracula, who victimizes young women and drinks their blood while he drugs them. We have a small town chief of police who accidentally gets bitten becoming a werewolf while fighting a big tech company that's polluting his town. We have a creature who is defending his land while a one-man submarine is experimenting and trying to find information below the surface about that creature. We have a racist, potentially Nazi pharaoh who wants to rebuild the world in an image that he sees to be the proper way. We have a retired sitcom star who is now an opera star. And we have the Meta-Luna mutant. Those are my picks. Those are my pitches for how you reboot the Universal Monsters universe. Are these going to be what happens? I doubt it. But hey, that's still a fun idea to play with. I had a lot of fun coming up with these. I want to do more of these pitch videos. And the thing is, too, at the time I'm recording this, I've been pretty sick. Like, my throat's been killing me. And I haven't really been able to talk. So I hope it comes off good in the video. If not, please let me know if it sounds like I'm dying or something. I'm not. I'm okay. But it's probably going to be a shorter episode of the GeekWave this week. But I say that every week, and then it surprises me the length of them. So that is just going to have to be what we do there. As always, I like to end the show with a couple recommendations for you guys, starting off with watching the Mummy franchise with Brendan Fraser in it. He is such a talented guy. I absolutely adore him in everything he does. I love seeing him and stuff. I think he's a talent. I love it. So those are really good movies. On the same note, watch the Bela Lugosi Dracula, because it's really good. He's a really underrated actor. I think it's incredible stuff. And watch Smokey and the Bandit. I think that's one of those movies that a lot of young people should check out just because it's not going to be what you expect. It's not. It's something that's actually pretty fun and pretty unique that a lot of people can enjoy because it's got a timeless feel to it. And this is a new one I think everyone should watch. The documentary called Epstein, Filthy Rich on Netflix. What a creepy, dark story that really makes you hate this guy. And tell me taking that idea from that documentary and moving it to a Dracula type story wouldn't be compelling. I think it'd be compelling. So that is this episode of the GeekWave. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you. Please leave a rating, and I'd love to hear what you guys say. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, guys, you can check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that good stuff, and I will catch you in the next video. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck. Tsunami Studios.